give you a sense of how the markets are performing this hour. The JSE will be contending with sharply weaker Asian markets this morning, as well as pressure on Tencent after a roller coaster of a week, particularly for energy prices. Markets have been fixated on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, with Western sanctions ramping up on the latter and indeed generating a fog of uncertainty for the globe's economic prospects in 2022. Matete Thulare is head of foreign exchange at the Rand Merchant Bank, joining us now to make sense of the latest market moves. Mr. Thulare, thank you very much for your time. Let's start with the Rand, which seems to be performing better lately. Talk us through the sentiments that are driving these moves. Is the risk of 16 Rand against the dollar mark behind us?
Good morning, Tony. I suppose it's the end of another, crazy week. And I suppose, as you say, the Rand has shown tremendous resilience this month, despite, the tag as a proxy currency for emerging market sentiment. I mean, whilst money from non-residents has been pouring into the local bonds and stock markets in the recent days, the Rand is actually just one of 5 amongst the basket of 24 developing nations that has advanced against the dollar in the month of March. Leading the pack is Colombia's peso. Obviously, they have posted the biggest gains in the emerging market group of currencies. But nonetheless, I mean, the Rand local bonds are being bought up, even though emerging market debt more generally has been hit hard by the sell-off that we've seen that's been sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, inflows from foreign buyers this year stand at around 20.7 billion Rand. That's about $1.35 billion equivalent. Now, also, when you just look at the stock market, that's also outperforming. Returning, the local bourse has returned about 3.1% in dollar terms compared to the 10% drop that we've seen in the MSCI Emerging Market Index. Now, the local market is really helped by the exposure to the mining industry, which has benefited from the increasing in metal prices, as importers, steer clear of Russian products. And I suppose also that's also helping the precious metal stocks. Obviously, it is a haven in terms of volatility. And already, I mean, the Rand has returned about 6%, and it is the 5th best performing emerging market currency on a year-to-date basis. So I suppose all in all, we are still trading below 15.10 this morning. And I suppose that 16 level that you talk about, we will have to see some sort of major emerging market crisis that will have to come into the market and obviously unfold itself, or potentially the situation out in Eastern Europe really getting to a situation where it's really tense and actually even intense for us to actually start seeing the 16 handle. So I suppose all in all, the Rand is resilient. It is doing well, but obviously on the broader side of things, we're still being hurt by oil prices on the back of that.
Yeah, let's focus the attention on commodities for a bit. Oil prices looking steady as supply concerns ease, while gold slides at the back of the strong U.S. inflation data. Talk us through those commodity moves.
I suppose when you just look at it broadly, I mean, from the commodities perspective, gold and oil have been leading the front pack in terms of news flow and headlines for the past couple of years. But I think the real, asset class that has came through and obviously been behind the shadows and has done tremendously well is the coal prices. But nonetheless, oil is heading for the biggest weekly decline since November. I think it is taking a breather after a period of really wild trading. I mean, just earlier this week, we saw oil prices going to around $135 a barrel. And obviously, the surge in prices is really on the back of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I mean, that's going to be the key theme that's going to dominate the financial market for the next couple of weeks. We have seen that prices have come down more than 8% in the oil market this week, after the market obviously has been rocketed by news of the US banning of Russian crude imports. And it looks like now these are the first signs of an OPEC plus disunity. Now, the fallout from the war has rippled through the commodity markets. As I said earlier, it's rippled through from wheat to key fuels such as gasoline and diesel. And obviously now that's also increasing inflationary pressure around the world. I mean, already when we're just looking at the under recovery from a local perspective, it looks at around 3 rand. So potentially next month we could have like a 3 rand increase in petrol prices that will obviously hurt the consumer. Now, on the other side of the commodity side, gold is obviously heading for its second weekly advance. It's just trading below $2,000 an ounce. Gold has been a long-time haven. It has rallied within a few dollars, setting a record high earlier this week. Obviously on the back as a demand of store for value and obviously, guys using it as a safe haven. Now, the war in Europe and the sanctions against Russia, that's seen commodity prices soar to records on concerns that, we are going to see supplies at risk, which will reinforce the inflation shock to the global economy. And I suppose this is something that already the likes of Lesetja Kganyago and team at the Reserve Bank are going to be looking at, because on the 24th of March, we do have that interest rate decision. So I suppose oil prices, gold prices, the rand price, but also the increase in fuel, that's also going to be something that they keep top of mind before they make the decision in the next week and a half.
Let's talk company news. Old Mutual committing itself to a carbon-free future by joining a UN-backed body that aims to achieve net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. Talk us through that future growth story.
I suppose, look, I think ESG is the big dominating theme. This is, going through across, a lot of the asset managers, and obviously there is a lot of mandates for them to actually come through with the ESG mandate. But I suppose if you just look at it, future growth, it is South Africa's biggest specialist fixed income investor. They oversee around 195 billion rand. But the key thing for me was the transaction that they actually came into yesterday, where now they're actually going to be bought by African Women Chartered Accountants Investment Holdings. Now, that's a black-owned female with around a majority of 53 shareholders being chartered accountants and business leaders. They've bought about 21% in future growth for an unspecified amount, and this transaction will actually move future growth significantly towards its long-stated goal of being more than 50% black-owned. Now, that also speaks into the whole mandate of transformation, and now Old Mutual actually own 55% of future growth. The staff there will earn about 18%, and the Imfundo Education Trust, that will earn around 5.3%. So it just shows you that there is a lot that's happening in terms of transformation and also the ESG mandates that a lot of companies are embarking on, and it's actually quite a good sign to see, especially in the financial services industry.
Let's conclude the conversation with Ster-Kinekor, which has been plucked from business rescue after a 250 million rand offer was received, and it itself received overwhelming support from creditors and shareholders. It's good news for cinema lovers like me.
So as you say, they were placed in business rescue about 14 months ago on the back of COVID-19 pandemics and obviously the prolonged lockdown restrictions. Now, Blantyre Capital, which is a London listed investment management firm, and also Greenpoint Capital, which is a South African private credit investment firm, they've offered that 250 million rand. As you say, they're really looking at rescuing Ster-Kinekor Group. The rescue plan has been approved by the group's creditors and their shareholders. Now, this will see the full 100% being taken over by Blantyre Capital and Greenpoint. And the plan is actually to bind on all parties and actually implement the plan as we speak. And I think they're really making sure that they're going to start fast-tracking this move. Just up until 2020 in February, the business was profitable and it was highly cash generative. It had really good prospects of future and ongoing profitability, especially given the pipeline of blockbuster movies that were coming. Obviously, for the likes of yourself, we actually enjoy going to the movies. So I think from a trading perspective, as the market was being updated just last month, weekly attendance performance looks like it has returned to pre-holiday season levels, which is obviously good for the business. So I suppose as they implement this business rescue, we will see Ster-Kinekor at least coming through over the next few months and obviously coming back to the fore and performing well.
Matete Thulare, thank you very much for that markets update and your insight there, sir. He is the head of foreign exchange execution at Rand Merchant Bank.